Hey guys, I'm back once again, and now that we've got We Never Learn out of the way and the reviews of The Promised Neverland out of the way, now it's time to move on to my favourite manga. It used to be The Promised Neverland, but now it is Dr. Stone, and we're going to be talking about the anime adaptation. I've seen the first 3 episodes. I saw them just recently, like literally in the last couple of hours, and I've been taking my notes and everything, and hopefully this will be a lot more simpler because at last we finally got a series that's actually keeping to the actual story itself, not cutting an awful lot. Now they do mix around a few things from time to time, but it actually makes it flow a little bit better than what it did in the manga, and we'll talk about them when we get into it. But for now, let's just go right to the new intro. Yeah, so we've got a new intro. We've got one for We Never Learn, Promised Neverland, and Dr. Stone. So, yeah, well, for starters, what is Dr. Stone? Well, Dr. Stone takes place in the future in the year 5370. I believe that is the actual number. Let's have a look. Let's actually have a look here. 5,738. Okay, so I got the year a little bit mixed up, but the series starts off in the year 2038, and we have the two main characters, Taiju and Senku, and all of a sudden the world is turned to stone. We don't know the origin of the... You know when you're on a roll of something and then something like that happens with the ice cream man? It's like, come on, let me go on a roll. Right, anyway, getting back to it. Anyway, Taiju and Senku, and Taiju's about to confess to Yuzuriha, his love interest, and Senku's like to other people, he's not going to get rejected. Now all of a sudden, bright green flash of light, everyone is turned to stone, and it cuts to the year 5738, and Taiju wakes up, and Senku wakes up, and they find a way to revive a few limited people, but who they choose to revive alongside Yuzuriha is basically Tsukasa, who's like this big oaf of a person who can kill lions by punching them, and he wants to cleanse the world of all the impure adults because of something that happened in his childhood, and Senku doesn't agree with that. So because a battle of brains and brawn was Senku's Society of Science versus Tsukasa's Society of Strength and Power. There are a few other characters that are introduced throughout the story, including this village of people that have a connection that come back to Senku eventually, and also as well, a lot of people were actually confused at the beginning and when they actually thought that Taiju was the main character. But if people were actually paying attention, they would know that if they read the manga online, there's like this little caption at the bottom which reads chapter such and such ends, and it has a picture of the main characters, and at the end of chapter 1 the picture that appeared at the bottom of the ending of first of chapter 1 was Senku. Now that was my cue up of like, okay, Senku's supposed to be the main character here, and he is. Senku is the main character. He's the titular character of Dr. Stone, helps to revive the world back to modern civilization and beyond, because that's his dream. He wants to travel beyond the stars and explore space and everything. And where we are in the manga right now, I'm not going to spoil it, but what I know is that we've got 26 episodes, no, actually 24 episodes. I made that mistake in one of the videos when I said 26, but actually it's 24 episodes. But hopefully we will have a season 2 as well, because from what I can gather, it's going up until the end of the first major part of the story, just before they actually start the war with Tsukasa's Empire of Might, as it's known. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the series. I'll talk about my favourite characters when we get introduced to them, because while Senku's one of my favourite characters of the series, he's number 5. He has this cynical structure about it. It's almost like if you took Mayuri from Bleach and Deadpool and threw them together. That's kind of like the characteristics you get from Senku. Not in the sense of Mayuri's sadisticness, but more in the sense of like he's smart. He's smart as hell, but Deadpool in the sense that he has a very cynical, snarky bastard type of his personality as well. But that's what I wanted to say for now. Let's get right into talking about episode 1. Alright, to start off with, the first major thing that's actually cut is actually right here when Taiju's about to confess to Yuzuriha outside of their school. It cuts out the thoughts of Taiju that's like, that's right, like the honest and uptight dude I am, I told Yuzuriha to meet me under the kompo tree. That's where I'll confess. Again, it's showing that Taiju, despite him being a big oaf, he does have a heart of gold, but also he thinks highly of himself, being an upright dude. And in a sense he is. He's kind of like how you would perceive a traditional shonen protagonist, even though Senku's the main character. But Taiju is an honest and upright dude. But the fact that he gets his sense of ego out in this little bit here, again, it would have been nice to actually include that in the anime itself. And one thing that as well that's actually cut out is this part right here where the world is actually being turned to stone. You have the US president going, terrorists, no, I can't die here, there's still so much to do. Oh no, conscience slipping away. So again, getting that sense of a world leader and how his conscience is slipping away, and it's going to be like a metaphor of like there's going to be no adults here. It's all going to be having to do with the kids and how they're going to cope with the situations themselves. Now, one of the running themes that happens throughout all 3 episodes is the fact that they cut around stuff and mix it around, but there's actually a reason for it. Case in point is right here where we have the flashback with Yuzuriha and Taiju outside of the vets, trying to figure out what's going on with these birds, why have they turned to stone, and them debating whether or not they are actually real birds. They have that actually at this part right here, where after Taiju is actually revived and he's actually walking around everywhere and trying to figure out something, that's where we actually get the flashback. And I can see why they actually put that in. It was sort of like, okay, we've got a part here where he's actually walking around and there's nothing really we can actually put here, so we'll have the flashback put here just so that we can get to the point as quickly as possible of where they're actually in the stone world itself. And I'm fine with that. And it's the same thing as well when he actually discovers Tsukasa. They actually cut that to a point right around where Taiju is actually finding grapes to actually make wine to actually help with the petrification. It's right about it's right here. After when Taiju sucks those grapes, that's when he sees Tsukasa, and we get that whole idea of who Tsukasa is. So again, I love how they didn't cut that out, and it's sort of like, okay, they just sort of like put it at a point where it would seem much more like natural, because at the beginning of the series, it's like, okay, we're going to save this for later on when it's actually sort of like around the time when Tsukasa's actually going to be much more prominent or prevalent, even though it doesn't happen until episode 2. But anyway, that's besides the point. Again, like I said, it's not necessarily about it. Unlike Promised Neverland, who just cut stuff out that was actually important, the fact that they're sort of like compensating for it in Dr. Stone actually makes me less angry of the fact, like, okay, they're including everything, they're just cutting it around so that it seems like it flows much more natural for the medium that they're actually creating. Now, one thing I actually really did love about episode 1 is the way they actually describe Senku's actual diagram thing. If I can actually find it, guys, I'm sorry, it's just always going about everywhere. Yeah, right here, like how they did their diagram with the diagram here, which was basically in a sort of like cartoony children's afternoon sort of like style, where it's like we could combine the alcohol and euphorus with the nitric acid to produce a liquid known as nitol, and it's doing it in sort of like a childish, like sort of like King Bite, like any of those old computer programs that you used to study for science and everything. He's doing it sort of like that way, so it's kind of cartoony, but at the same time it lets you understand as well. And also when they're actually going and doing the wine tasting and everything, we get more of Senku right here. We get more of Senku's thoughts about how the whole process is going to be going through actually turning this wine into making it the petrification. And another thing that they actually cut out here as well is when Taiju's getting conscious about his beard, and it's like, Yuzumi is gonna hate this. We should probably do something about it. Purely hygienic reasons getting stuck out right here. Instead, it's just a case of like, oh, my beard. Maybe I should cut it. Oh, there's some showers. They spend much more time on Senku actually laughing his arse off at just how ridiculous Taiju is. Which again, it's not really a bad thing that they actually cut out. But again, I would like to see just like that expressed nature of Taiju, rather than just actually cutting it out altogether. Now, pretty much that's it for episode 1. Like I said, adapted pretty well. It adapted the first 2 chapters really well. Now, the first 3 episodes adapt volume 1, which again I love because it allowed them to be much more free and and rather than just like cramming like 3 or 4 volumes in like 5 episodes or something like that, like, or two volumes in 5 episodes. I should be much more saying as well, because I believe that we got to volume 2 right at episode 3 or 4 or something in Promised Neverland, whereas here it's like no, we're getting we're just focusing the first three episodes, volume 1, and then hopefully later on they can actually like, okay, now we need to slow down a bit now if we want to actually continue at the pace that we're actually continuing at. So I like that. But one thing that they actually mix about, which I was going to talk about, is that they actually saved the moment when Senku actually tells Taiju, you have the chance to save someone. Who would it be? They saved that to like the preview scene for the next episode. So again, like I said, they're just mixing around and making it seem flow much more naturally for the episode, and also timing is an important factor as well, which is something that I don't think the Promised Neverland got down all too much. So now we're moving on to episode 2. Now episode 2, they actually cut out the recap at the end of chapter 2. Which is right about this part right here, where the recap itself, where they say it's been 7 million years, it's been several millennia since humanity turned to stone. Only 2 high school boys managed to survive, Senku and Taiju. They spent a year so far trying to restart civilization from scratch. Their efforts and powers of science have yielded a fluid that refers to the petrification. And again, I understand why they actually cut that, because there was no point. People had already been watching the series at that point. So it would have been just something that just didn't need it. Although it might have been beneficial had people not seen the first episode. So whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, that's up to interpretation. But again, as well, what else they add in is a foreshadow. There's a lot added in to episode 2. But again, they don't cut anything out. They just add. They just build on stuff rather than take away, and they're able to add everything in from chapters 3 and 4 of the actual manga. Or 3, 4 and 5. It's either 3, 4 and 5 or just 3 and 4. But anyway, they add foreshadowing about Tsukasa by saying, what if we were 5 just a murderer? That's what Senku actually says. Says himself, and again, that I love that they actually are building up on ideals of what could potentially come, and actually creating foreshadowing for events that are going to happen in the episode itself. Now, one thing I want to talk about is like the music in the episodes really helps to build up the moments and give a sense of like adrenaline, but at the same time suspense. And the music when Tsukasa wakes up is it's just so good that I highly recommend you just go and see it. That's one thing that I just wanted to bring up, in the sense that the music just adds more to the atmosphere of the fact that we're in a wondrous world, but at the same time we're in a world that's actually had the original world destroyed, and I feel like they get that down in terms of the musical cues. And one thing they add more of is a montage of Tsukasa fighting animals, again to get the idea of just how much of a threat Tsukasa is actually going to be when he actually does become a villain. So again, I like how the fact that they're not really taken away from the actual manga itself, they're just sort of like building on the ideas of the series itself, because all we get in the actual manga itself is we get the lions being punched out, but in the fish being skewed, whereas in the actual episode itself we get him actually fighting ducks and fighting boars and everything like that, and actually catching food for them in that regard. So I like that they actually built up Tsukasa a bit more than he was presented in the manga, and actually giving like, okay, this guy is a serious threat. However, one thing that I actually did not understand is when they've actually caught the fish, is that Tsukasa finds a woman under a rock and then just puts her down, and after that she is never seen again. So I felt like, okay, you were doing so well up until this point, so what was the point of actually adding that little bit in? Was it just to stretch out time? Probably was. But anyway, another thing that they actually changed is that unlike in here where we get Tsukasa having just like these dumb expressions, there's none of that in the anime. And again, that's actually to build up the idea of just how much of a serious threat he is. No holds barred, just straight to the point, just bowls out villain that Tsukasa is. And I feel like if they actually did include those like dumbfounded expressions on his face, I feel like that just would have taken away from the threat that he actually opposes to the group itself. And the last thing I noticed about episode 2, so you can see how quickly we've actually got through this. Like, there's really nothing different from the manga to the anime. But one last big difference in episode 2 is when Senku goes, "A man who praises another man to his face is either flirting or scheming. What are you really trying to say?" In the anime, he just mentions scheming. He doesn't mention flirting, which obviously Senku would actually pick up on. He'd be more interested in, like, oh, you're scheming something, rather than thinking about actual romance, because that's something Senku lacks. He lacks romantic interest at all. He's not interested in anything romantically, even to the point where he has to kiss a woman later on in the series, and he's just like, oh god, do I have to do this? So he's kind of like cynical in that respect. Now that doesn't mean to say he doesn't have a heart, because he does. It's just the romance aspect. It's just something he just can't grasp at this moment in time. If ever at all. He's more, if the only woman that would probably be all over is a woman who's just as smart as him and just as capable of reviving humanity as him. That's probably the only woman that would actually be able to give him a sense of like romantic interest. Now, the only thing's different about episode 3 is the fact that they just changed certain events around. So when they're talking about the cherry blossoms actually being different and actually becoming extinct, they saved that to when they're actually at the summit right here. I've finally got it on the first page. At the summit right here, that's when they're talking about the cherry blossoms in the anime itself. Before they actually get to the summit. And another thing that's actually changed around is that Senku actually has a plan, but he doesn't mention it until they actually get to the hot springs at the end of the actual episode itself. He doesn't actually mention the gunpowder plot until that moment in time, and there's no moment of when they're actually getting into the hot springs themselves. And again, I feel like that wasn't really something that actually bothered me as much about it as well. It's just like, okay, we're going to change things around, but we're not going to actually take anything away. We're just going to make it fit and flow much more to how we want to tell the story itself, but whilst also sticking to the original source material as much as possible. So yeah, that was basically all that was about the first 3 episodes of Dr. Stone. Like I said, not many changes around, and what they did was just not many changes, not many differences, and what they changed around they just added in later, or they just brought forward a little bit more to depending on the situation or the conversation itself and whether or not it made sense or not. So yeah, finally we're getting a very good adaptation. I can't believe that it's actually gone like, okay, Promise Neverland, not so good. We Never Learned, okay, it was a little bit Dr. Stone, pretty damn good in terms of adapting, and I hope they can keep up this right up until the end of part 1 of the stories. But we'll just have to wait and see, guys. But anyway, guys, what did you think of these 3 episodes? Did they surprise you? Did they or did they not? So let me know, like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And this will be Lash and Luke signing off. Later, guys.